Look at this. Today, Lake Tahoe sits nearly 3.5 feet above its typical seasonal level, with boats gliding across its crystalline surface while millions of tourists capture the view. The water is a deep, inviting sapphire, yet behind this postcard-perfect scenery lies a terrifying reality that almost every news station in the entire country is completely failing to mention. While the lake appears overflowing, the surrounding Sierra Nevada mountains stand eerily naked, stripped of the massive snowpack that acts as the lifeblood for nearly 40 million thirsty residents. You are witnessing a massive geographic deception, where a full reservoir masks the beginning of an environmental collapse that will reshape the future of the entire western United States. Why would a lake brimming with water be the ultimate signal of an impending catastrophe, and how can such a beautiful sight be the harbinger of a historical dry spell? This is not just a story about weather. It is a deep dive into a broken system designed for a climate that has already ceased to exist on our planet. Stop scrolling and listen closely, because what you are about to hear is a secret hidden in plain sight, buried beneath the surface of America's most famous alpine lake. Forget everything you thought you knew about the water crisis, because the blue illusion of Tahoe is currently lying to the eyes of every single person across the nation. By the time we reach the end of this journey, you will never look at a beautiful landscape the same way again, realizing that beauty can often hide deep rot. Let us peel back the shimmering surface and examine the trap that has been set by nature and worsened by the very infrastructure we built to protect ourselves. There are exactly 0 inches of snow where there should be 10 feet, and this missing frozen reservoir is the true ticking time bomb for the state of California. We are standing on the precipice of a disaster that looks like a paradise, and the countdown to the inevitable dry summer has already reached its final, most critical stage. Prepare yourself for the truth that nobody wants to face, as we uncover why the stunning fullness of Lake Tahoe is actually a desperate cry for help from nature. To understand why Lake Tahoe is lying to you, you must understand a fundamental truth that schools never teach: the critical difference between liquid water and solid frozen snow. For over 100 years, the state of California has relied on a massive, invisible infrastructure known to scientists as the giant frozen reservoir of the high Sierra Nevada mountains. Snow is not just frozen precipitation. It is a natural battery that stores trillions of gallons of water during winter and releases it slowly throughout the long, hot summer months. Rain, on the other hand, is a chaotic visitor that rushes down the slopes in a matter of hours, filling the lake quickly but vanishing into the ocean just as fast. This year, the total precipitation appeared normal on the charts, but the form it took was a devastating blow to the water security of the entire Pacific West Coast region. The snowpack reached its absolute peak on the 25th of February at only 73% of the historical average, leaving the mountains dangerously barren before the spring even began. Then came the month of March, which shattered every record in 132 years of observation, becoming the hottest March ever recorded in the history of the United States. The average temperature soared to 9.4 degrees Fahrenheit above the 20th century mean, marking the first time in history any single month has exceeded a 9-degree deviation. This extreme warmth acted like a giant blowtorch, melting the meager snowpack weeks before it could properly soak into the thirsty ground or replenish the deep underground aquifers below. Look at the official data from Phillips Station, where snow should typically be waist-deep on the 1st of April. But this year, it was nothing but a green meadow. For the first time in living memory, the sensors recorded 0 inches of snow and 0% of the average, a terrifying void where our summer water should have been. The reason Lake Tahoe looks so full right now is simply because the mountains have already surrendered all their water in one sudden, violent burst of unseasonable liquid rain. A full lake in April without a thick snowpack on the peaks is like having a full gas tank, but knowing there are no more gas stations for 500 miles. The shimmering blue surface is a mask for the fact that the primary source of replenishment for the Truckee River has already evaporated into the warming spring atmosphere forever. However, the melting snow is only half of the nightmare, because the true danger lies hidden within the very geological structure of the massive stone basin that holds Lake Tahoe. We have been conditioned to believe that full lakes mean prosperity, but in the era of rapid climate shifts, a full lake can actually be a sign of total failure. Lake Tahoe is not a typical body of water formed by a simple river. It is a massive fault block basin created by violent tectonic shifts millions of years ago. Imagine a giant granite bowl sitting high in the mountains, a basin so deep and vast that it contains enough water to cover the entire state of California perfectly. This geological marvel has dozens of small mountain streams flowing into it, but it possesses only one single, narrow exit point known to the world as the Truckee River. Controlling that lone exit is the Lake Tahoe Dam, an engineering relic built in 1913, designed for an era when weather patterns were far more stable and predictable. That ancient dam was never intended to manage sudden, massive surges of liquid rain, as it was built primarily to regulate the slow, gentle melting of thick mountain snowpack. To understand the danger, we must look back at 1997, when heavy rain fell onto snow, causing a catastrophic surge that cost $700 million in damages. Today, the situation is even more precarious, because there is no snow left to act as a sponge, meaning every single drop of rain flows instantly into the lake. Between the middle of February and early March, 16 billion gallons of water poured into the basin, hitting the surface like a giant hammer against a fragile glass floor. After 36 months of severe drought, the soil around the lake has undergone a process called hydrophobicity, essentially turning the natural earth into a sheet of solid concrete. This means that the mountains can no longer absorb the water, forcing the entire volume into the granite bowl within hours, rather than over a period of several months. The lake is currently being filled with what engineers call dead water, a sudden surge that provides no long-term security but poses a massive threat to everything downstream. Downstream, the city of Reno and the agricultural heart of Nevada depend entirely on the controlled release of this water through a single aging concrete gate in the mountains. If the rain continues to fall on this hardened earth, the 1913 dam will face pressure levels. It was never designed to survive in our modern, chaotic climate. You are seeing a full lake, but in reality, you are looking at a ticking time bomb waiting for the next atmospheric river to trigger an uncontrollable regional catastrophe. But why is the lake still so remarkably high today even without the snow? And why is that answer more frightening than any flood we have seen before? To understand the true danger of Tahoe's deception, we must look past the surface and examine the hidden threshold that could soon paralyze the entire state of Nevada. Lake Tahoe is full today, but California is living on the financial savings of 3 years ago, and that specific account is rapidly approaching a zero balance for everyone. Most people do not realize that our current water levels are a ghost of the past, representing accumulated storage from previous seasons rather than any recent winter abundance. This phenomenon, known as carryover storage, is the only reason the faucets are still running and the fields are still green in the middle of a massive climate shift. Carla Nemeth, the director of the Department of Water Resources, has stated clearly that what we currently have in our reservoirs is all we will get for this year. There will be no late-season snow and no spring rains to bail us out, leaving the state in a position of extreme vulnerability as the hottest months fast approach. The early disappearance of the snowpack means that mountain vegetation loses its slow, consistent water source, causing grasses and shrubs to become bone dry several months ahead of schedule. CAL FIRE has issued urgent warnings because the official wildfire season is arriving weeks earlier than normal, turning our beautiful forests into massive piles of dry, combustible tinder. When the moisture in the forest floor evaporates early, even a small spark can trigger a conflagration that rivals the most destructive fires in the history of the country. In the northern Sierra region, which feeds the largest reservoirs in the entire state, the water content is sitting at a devastating 6% of the historical seasonal average. This 6% figure is not just a statistic. It is a death sentence for the water supply of millions of people who depend on the Sierra Nevada mountains. As the summer sun intensifies, the rate of evaporation will skyrocket, and the lack of mountain runoff will leave no way to replace the billions of gallons being lost. Water demand will spike to record levels while the supply remains frozen at its current state, creating a mathematical impossibility that the government is trying desperately to ignore today. The psychological countdown has begun, and the question is no longer whether a drought will occur, but exactly which month the water system will finally reach its breaking point. We are currently witnessing the final stage of a multi-year cycle where nature has given us one last chance to prepare before the true, unforgiving dry spell actually arrives. The lush, green scenery we see in April is a cruel mirage, hiding the fact that the soil moisture levels are lower than they were during the Great Depression. Every gallon of water we use for irrigation or drinking is now a withdrawal from a bank account that is no longer receiving any deposits from the high mountains. When the public finally realizes the severity of the situation, it will likely be too late to implement any meaningful changes to our consumption habits or our aging infrastructure. Everything will change when the water level of Lake Tahoe drops below its natural rim, a terrifying geological boundary that almost no American has ever heard of until now. This invisible line in the granite is the ultimate gatekeeper of the regional economy, and we are racing toward it with the speed of an out-of-control freight train. Do you actually know what the natural rim of Lake Tahoe is? Or why this invisible geographic boundary holds the absolute power of life and death over the entire region? It is the geological threshold of 6,223 feet. And once the water falls below this point, the Truckee River will simply cease to exist for the season. Everything downstream, from the neon lights of Reno to the vast agricultural fields of Nevada and the vital hydroelectric power systems, depends entirely on that single overflow from the lake. If the coming winter fails to bring massive snowpack, Lake Tahoe will transform from a sparkling tourist destination into a giant, static mirror reflecting the collapse of the entire region. We must reframe our perspective and realize that Lake Tahoe is not just a scenic landmark, but a global scoreboard flashing a warning that our old world is gone. The shimmering water is telling a story that no politician dares to speak out loud. The water infrastructure of the American West was built for a climate that no longer exists. We are using ancient tools to fight a modern war against a changing atmosphere, and the full surface of the lake is the ultimate distraction from the truth behind us. The next time you see a photo of a beautiful, overflowing lake, ask yourself if you are looking at a healthy ecosystem or just a bank account about to go dry. Are you seeing the shimmering surface of the water, or are you brave enough to look at the naked, brown mountain peaks that no longer hold the promise of snow? The deception of Tahoe is a warning for every citizen in the nation, because what happens here is a preview of the difficult future that awaits us all very soon. If you believe that your friends and family need to understand the reality behind this blue illusion, you must share this information before the summer sun arrives for good. We can no longer afford to be blinded by beauty while the foundation of our survival is being stripped away by a planet that is moving on without us. The clock is ticking at the natural rim, and once the flow stops, the silence will be the only thing left to tell the story of Lake Tahoe's final lie. This entire investigation was built on a psychological loop, where we challenged your initial perception of beauty by revealing the hidden, dangerous geological mechanics lying beneath the shimmering blue surface. We transitioned from the simple visual of an overflowing lake to the complex reality of a dying snowpack, effectively breaking the illusion of safety that currently blinds nearly 40 million people. Every chapter was designed to escalate the tension, moving from geological flaws to the inevitable countdown of the natural rim, where the regional water economy will eventually reach its breaking point. By the final second, the goal was to transform your curiosity into an urgent awareness of a climate system that has fundamentally moved beyond the reach of our current human infrastructure. Now that you know the truth, the only question remaining is whether you will choose to ignore the warnings or prepare for the era of the vanished frozen mountains.